Hello and welcome everyone to Gustavo's book club, to Gustavo's online book club, where we read books regarding health and plant-based nutrition. And we are currently reading Reversing Diabetes by Dr. Neal Barnard. So welcome everyone. Before we get started, just a few announcements. One of them is actually a disclaimer, which means that this video is for information only. Don't take this as a advice from a medical doctor. You need to be under medical care while you change the weight that you eat, so that when adjustments need to be made to your medication for diabetes and hopefully discontinuing it, it will be done properly by a medical doctor. So that's very important. I also want to announce that, I want to announce that there are several other book clubs that we have completed since April or May of 2020, and those are all on my YouTube channel, which is under my name, Gustavo Tolosa, and they are in a playlist. So make sure that you look at those. They have such good information, and we have guests, and I have recipes, etc. The risotto webinar that I aired last week was truly amazing. If you missed it, you can still register. The link will appear underneath this video if you're watching it on YouTube, and in the description area. Otherwise, if you would like the link to register, you can still register. You can email me at info@plantemas.com. And I want to announce that I am finally starting a series of webinars in Spanish, because so many Spanish speakers need this information. And I am teaming up with a wonderful doctor, Dr. Diego Poniman, who practices medicine in Texas, in the United States. And if you know anybody who speaks Spanish, we will be doing 4 sessions, 4 Sundays of a abridged version of this. It will be 4 Sundays of diabetes information, but all in Spanish. Don't worry about it. You will not miss out anything if you don't speak Spanish. It's what I do here, but in Spanish, and in 4 sessions instead of 8. So the link to register for those webinars, which are free, will be in the description area of this video. And just wanted to encourage you to visit our website at plantemas.com, and also my social media, which is YouTube under my name, and then Facebook is under Dr. Starch on Facebook. So just something that occurred to me today as I was preparing for our time together. Remember that we have control over a lot of things. We don't have control over a lot of other things, but we do have control over what we put in our mouths to eat. And if we do any type of activity, even if it's walking 1 block, okay, at the beginning, if you cannot walk more than that, we do have control over that. And that is all that is needed with this wonderful way of eating, in which you don't have to measure portions, and you don't have to weigh things, and you don't have to count calories, because it's all designed by Mother Nature with the calorie, the caloric content being just perfect. So just wanted to remind you that we do have control over a lot of what goes on in our health. Some of you have asked me what I do if I have a sweet tooth attack. Okay, I have less and less of those. I don't know why. I mean, I think I know why, but gradually over the years, because I don't consume so much sugar, everything tastes sweeter, and I just don't crave sweets as much as before. But when I do, or if I do, this comes to my rescue. This is a wonderful date. I can't think of anything sweeter than this other than the Hannah sweet potatoes or other sweet potatoes, although sometimes sweet potatoes, it's just, you have to go with luck. Sometimes they're sweet and sometimes they're not so sweet, but dates always are. So why don't you have to worry about dates? Because this is a whole food and it's a plant. This has not been made into powder. It has not been put in a blender. It has not become oil or anything like that. This is whole food. It's intact. It has all the fiber, which is the secret when we talk about a lot of this. Fiber slows down the absorption of sugar. And also, fiber is a wonderful way to eliminate a lot of cholesterol and other negative substances that we may have in our body. So this has water and fiber. Okay, I could leave it in water to soak up more water, and that way I would be consuming more water. But water and fiber is what makes this magic. And it is so sweet that with one, maybe two of these, my craving goes away. This one has a pit. And I wanted to share that. These are simple things, but they might make the difference between you eating that and eating a piece of cake, although you shouldn't have cake in your house. Remember that our environment will pretty much determine our success or not. The environment needs to be clean at your house. Okay, so let's move on. We are currently reading chapter 4 of this book, and this chapter I just love, and I don't want to rush it because I believe it's at the core of the book. And so just as a quick review, last week, if you haven't seen it, make sure you go to my YouTube channel and you can see it. It was a wonderful session. And there are 3 guidelines to follow. So this is Dr. Barnard has made this so easy to follow with 3 guidelines. Number 1 is set aside animal products. Keep vegetable oils to a minimum, and I might add, don't, 100%, keep them out just for 21 days. Nobody's going to die if they don't eat oil for 21 days. Actually, the opposite will happen. Favor foods with a low glycemic index, and I should also add, as long as they're whole food, plant-based. And those 3, if you can just follow them strictly for 21 days, you will see something that you will have never expected, especially if you have never followed a whole food plant-based diet. So we are in this edition. We also looked last week at the power plate. And that was very, very helpful. Now I am on page 52, and this is a revised edition. You may have another edition, but it's in chapter 4, and it's where it says healthier substitutes for dairy products. Okay. So I agree that dates are dry food, and so they're not great for weight loss. So is it better than having that sweet tooth attack and maybe going to a store and getting a piece of chocolate or a cupcake or something like that? Yes. But are these dates for you to eat with no limit every day, all day long? No, if you are trying to lose weight, because they have more calories than fresh fruit. These dates are dry fruit. So I agree on that. Remember that we really have to look at things from different perspectives, from a beginner who just joined this way of eating, or from someone like me who has been doing this for a long time. So if a date is going to help you stay compliant, by all means eat a date or two. But they are under the dry fruit, so it's better to eat a grape, let's say, than a raisin, because the raisin has less water, so it has less satiety. Well, with that being said, let's talk about dairy fat. Now, that is something that we really need to focus on, because 49% of cow's milk is fat. The calories come from fat. So that is a lot by any standard. You may imagine that 2% milk is much lower in fat. And this is a very deceiving, belief. It's done by marketing. When you see 2% or when you see 1% fat, you think that it is actually 2% or 1%. But that is not the case. They're mixing the ways of measuring calories or fat by using weight. So there is a lecture by Jeff Novick about this, but here it is explained very concisely. It says 2%. The 2% figure refers to fat content by weight, which is deceptive because it is thrown off by milk's water content. When you drink a glass of milk, your body absorbs that water. What matters for your health is how much fat you are left with. Nutritionists look for the percentage of calories. That is what we're looking for. Percentage of calories that come from fat, because that figure is unaffected by water content. This is a very tricky thing that is very unfair to the general public, because they do not know this. If they don't know that the percentage of calories is the way to look at things, because it's not affected by the weight of the water that comes in it. So it turns out that 2% milk that you think it has only 2% fat, it actually has 35% of calories come from nothing but fat. What is particularly worrisome about milk, though, is not only the amount of fat, although that is worrisome, but also the type of fat that it contains. Most of that fat is saturated fat, the very kind that is linked to insulin resistance and raises cholesterol levels. Dairy products are actually the leading source of saturated fat in the diet. Typical yogurt, ice cream, and sour cream products are high in fat too. Cheese is just loaded with it. Many brands derive about 70% of their calories from fat. Now, what about dairy sugar? So that was dairy fat, which is linked to insulin resistance in diabetics. What about dairy sugar? Fat-free dairy products have had their fat removed. Okay, why was it that in the 80s, I think that's when all of these fat-free products came into the market? Then later on, we look back and we see that actually people got more overweight and obese over time when there were all these fat-free products, because they took away the fat, but now the amount of sugar is off the chart. When the fat is skimmed away, the predominant nutrient in milk is actually sugar. It's called lactose, the dairy sugar. The lactose molecule is a combination of two smaller sugars, glucose and galactose. Approximately 55% of calories in fat-free milk come from lactose. So basically, when you're drinking fat-free milk and you have a glass, just imagine that half of that glass is just pure sugar. Okay, so that's dairy sugar. And now there's dairy protein, very damaging as well. These proteins have come under scrutiny for their potential contribution to type 1 diabetes, as described in the previous chapter, chapter 3. But they are implicated in many other health concerns as well. Animal proteins appear to accelerate the gradual loss of kidney function that can occur in diabetes. Dr. McDougall talks about this. Dr. Barnard talks about this. Dr. Esselstyn talks about, doctors talk about this all the time. Dairy protein, among the many damaging things that it can do to our body, one of them, a very serious one, is the damage that it does to our kidneys. Plant sources, on the other hand, of protein, like beans and grains and vegetables, etc., do not appear to cause the problem. It's only the animal protein, especially, of course, here we're talking about dairy protein. People who have migraines often report improvement when they avoid certain foods, and milk and other dairy products are often at the top of the list. So the same thing happens with rheumatoid arthritis. Dairy products, I'm in page 54 now. Dairy products are linked to other health problems ranging from acne to prostate and ovarian cancer. It is the latter issue, cancer, that has gotten the attention of the medical community. 2 large Harvard studies and several studies from other countries have shown that milk drinking men have a significantly higher risk of prostate cancer compared with men who generally avoid dairy products. So men out there, if you don't want to go through prostate cancer, rethink the way that you consume milk, which really should be 0. Okay, so there are many other things like hormonal effects and many other things. So milk's selling point has always been that it provides calcium. There are, however, by this point, the information really is out there now. It's not difficult to find it. There are better sources of calcium, much better sources of calcium, and more effective ways of maintaining strong bones. And then he will talk later on in the chapter about this. Now, what about making better choices? So instead of cow's milk or any kind of animal milk, try rice milk, almond milk, soy milks. There are nowadays, there's also oat milk, and they're actually not difficult to make. They're not difficult to make, and you can buy them, but make sure that when you buy them, you look at the label, because you will be surprised that some of these plant milks have oil added to them. Some of them have sugar added to them. So make sure you read that. And now, talking about reading, I'm going to read some comments here. Thank you for this webinar. Please help. I find that whenever I eat potatoes, rice, beans, grains, memory glows spikes. I am not on meds. Okay. Dr. Barnard talks about this, and in this chapter, Dr. McDougall talked about this in some of the webinars that I did with him, and I will put a link later on to those. I can't go into detail now because I do want to finish this chapter, but Dr. McDougall says that our glucose is supposed to go up after we eat, and it's supposed to go up after we consume some starches. They need to be unrefined carbohydrates. But if our cells function well and the glucose can get in the cell and all what we have talking about this book, it's fine. Otherwise, you will end up eating eggs and meat and cheese. Those don't have any carbohydrates. Okay, so your sugar is not going to go up, but you're destroying your kidneys and you're flooding your cells with fat that will not allow your insulin to work properly. So make sure that you really, if you have the book, and I hope you do, that you read it in detail in the previous chapter. But I will put the links there. And just a little announcement. I'm not sure if it will be next week, but if it's not next week, it's the following week. I will have a medical doctor as a guest, and we will be able to ask all these questions. So simply put, cows, let's see what it says here. House percent milk is for baby cows to grow. Of course, yes. Cow's milk is for cows. The composition is there so that a cow can grow at a faster pace, and with nutrients and different things that we humans don't need. Dr. Clapper has commented on not drinking cow's milk. Yes, great. All right, very good. So we were talking about alternatives for milk. You will want to choose the lowest in fat and sugar, of course. And what about other drinks? Dr. Barnard says, remember that we're talking about diabetes mostly. If you don't have diabetes, you will follow this and you will become healthier in many other areas. But we are talking about diabetes. So when he talks about drinking, he says, just drink water. Water, I like sparkling water a little more than water, but water. Try to stay away as much as possible from soda. Well, pretty much not. Stay away from soda, juice, and milk. Just drink pure water. There are many delicious non-dairy ice cream substitutions made from soy or rice milk, but in many cases, they have added sugar. So for if you really want to see this incredible response of your body to a whole food, plant-based diet, stay away, at least for those 21 days at the beginning, from things like ice cream, let's say, even though it's not made with cow's milk. What about eggs? Well, there are two problems with eggs. You have the yolk and you have the white. The yolk is where cholesterol lurks, which is around 200 milligrams in one single egg. That's similar to an 8-ounce steak. And people eat 2 or 3 or 4 eggs in one day. Some people will eat them several times a day. I mean, but maybe twice a day. So basically, they're eating 2 or 3 or 4 8-ounce steaks several times a day. The yolk also holds the fat, about 5 grams per egg. Egg white has problems of its own since it is essentially pure animal protein. As you know by now, animal protein can present problems to your kidneys, and you're better off with plant protein, not animal protein. Can there really be all that fat, cholesterol, and animal protein inside that little egg? Certainly. You have to keep in mind, and I'm on page 55 now, you have to keep in mind that when an egg hatches, a baby chick emerges. So that chick's body, the legs, the wings, skin, feathers, internal organs, and everything else was formed from what was inside the egg when it was laid. It's not by magic that it just pops up. Okay, so all the egg has everything in concentrated form to create a being. Like all, so it was loaded with cholesterol and other things you do not want. Like all animal products, eggs have no fiber at all and no complex carbohydrate. So, what can you use to substitute eggs? Well, if a recipe calls for just 1 or 2 eggs, leave them out. Instead, add a couple of extra tablespoons of water for moisture. We're talking about probably baking something. We're not talking about making scrambled eggs, because you're not going to make scrambled eggs with water, of course. But there are egg replacement powders that are available in many health food stores, and they really are very, very good to substitute for eggs in things like maybe you're making, I don't know, like a zucchini bread or a banana muffin. I don't know, something like that. Use 1 heaping tablespoon soy flour or cornstarch plus 2 tablespoons water to replace each egg in baked products. Okay, so on page 55, you have several ways to replace eggs. If you like scrambled eggs, there are ways to use tofu that it's pretty amazing how close to it comes to being like scrambled eggs. So I'm not going to read all of that because you have the book. And then number 2, it says, keep vegetable oils to a minimum. So why is that? Well, 2 reasons. First, all, and when we say all, we don't mean like, well, corn oil or olive oil or sunflower oil. No, all oil is loaded with fats. Okay, and those fats come 100%, not like 99, but 100% from fat. They have 9 calories per gram, more than twice what carbohydrates have. So when it comes to calorie content, vegetable oils are as fattening as lard. All fats and oils are equally fattening. Number 2, it says, if your goal is to regain as much insulin sensitivity as possible, you will want to eliminate not only animal fats, but also added vegetable oils. Because remember, we're trying to clean the animal fat out of your cellular locks. Okay, so of your cellular, like we were talking about taking that gum out of the log. And it does not good if you're going to clog them up with vegetable grease. So here are the sources of these oils. For example, fried foods, forget it. There are ways to make really good, for example, fries, potatoes or sweet potatoes in the oven with a couple of techniques, and you don't need to fry it. Added oils like in salad dressings and margarines, they have a lot of fat, oil used as ingredients. Many packed foods and sauces, you have to really look at the list of ingredients. If they have oil, just put them back on the shelf. Oils used in sauteing. Many recipes begin with the instruction to saute onions, garlic, or other ingredients in oil. Some restaurants use oil almost as a staple. So there are ways to avoid all that grease. And he says, steer clear of fried snacks such as potato chips and French fries. Top salads with fat-free dressings, lemon juice, balsamic vinegar, or seasoned rice vinegar. You have some recipes here for salad dressings. Be careful when you buy fat-free salad dressings because, again, they may not have the fat, but they have sugar. So someone here is saying, can you comment on why some alternative non-dairy milks are produced with oil? I have read many oat milks are processed with oil. It's a mystery to me. I don't know. I have tried to find out before. I don't know if it is something that has to do with shelf life, or if it's something that, oil is addictive. So it may be a way for you to consume more. It makes 0 sense for me to add oil to a plant milk. So I'm sorry, I don't know why, but if any of you find out, I would love to know. But do make sure that you read. I was shocked when I saw in one of the plant milks that I used to buy 6-7 years ago that it had oil. Okay, then someone else says, beginning on page 106, 108, they talk about making sense of glucose. Okay, let's see, we'll be getting to this. Okay, yes. The glycemic index is something that we all need to be very careful, because some people go overboard with this concept, with this information. And, the glycemic index is very low, let's say on cheese or on a piece of pizza, because it has very little or almost or none of the complex carbohydrates. But, an apple will have higher glycemic index. So what are you going to choose? A blob of cheese with all of the negativity that brings to our health, or an apple? So you have to make sure that when we're discussing glycemic index, that is always in the context of whole food, plant-based. As an example, we can give the example of, we have 2 plant-based foods, a plain potato and a plain sweet potato. Yes, the sweet potato has a lower glycemic index. Is the potato unhealthy? No. Again, I am not a medical doctor. I have worked and continue to work with medical doctors, and I have myself seen numerous times in the McDougall program that I have attended, many times, where Dr. McDougall's program is heavily, I guess what I want to say, they put a lot of attention on potatoes, among the other starches, but potatoes. So those patients, were they able to diminish or even go off medication? Yes, they were, and they were eating white potatoes. But we also talked about how some doctors have differences in their way of thinking, and we should not really go crazy or be upset by this. They just have some difference in the way that they think. Okay, I'm going off a little bit off topic here. We will get to all that very quickly. Read package labels. Make sure that you read. And there is a lecture by Jeff Novick about how to read labels. It really is simple. You have 2 or 3 things to look at, and then you will be in that group of people that is not going to be fooled. So, when it comes to avoiding greasy foods, some people are eager to make an exception for olive oil. It seems natural, and even chic. But think for a second about how factories manage to fill a bottle with oil. Yeah, I had the chance to go to an oil factory 40 years ago. And to get that 1 bottle of oil, they take this enormous number of olives. I don't remember right now if it was like 300 or 400 olives. And they discard the fiber. So the fiber is out. So you don't have that protective shield that the fiber gives you. And the pulp is also out. And also the water, because they were telling us how 1 molecule of water is not allowed in good oil. So everything healthy about that olive is gone. And you now have a bottle of 100% fat that is absorbed in a second, because there's no shield of the pulp and of the fiber and the water, and pretty much every nutrient goes out the window. You have some insignificant amounts of nutrients in olive oil. So gram for gram, olive oil has the same number of calories as beef fat or chicken fat or other fats and oils. That is 9 calories per gram, no matter what kind of fat it is. So no other food is more caloric dense on this planet than oil. Remember that. While olive oil contains a great deal of monounsaturated fat, which has little or no direct effect on cholesterol, it also contains saturated fat, about 14%. The kind that increases cholesterol and worsens insulin resistance. It does not matter how expensive this oil is, if it's virgin, extra virgin, extra virgin, it doesn't matter. It still has more calories and saturated fat than your body is designed to process to maintain optimal health. There are, of course, traces of natural vegetable oils in vegetables and fruits and beans and grains, but you don't need to worry about that. Your body does need a tiny amount of fat, and the key word is tiny, and it's embedded in the food with all the water, all the fiber, all the nutrients. And the plants provide that naturally. We don't have to worry about it. We run into problems when oils are concentrated, as they are in fried foods, oily soy sauces, and recipes with added oils. A few plant foods, okay, here we go. A few plant foods such as nuts, seeds, avocados, and some soy products are naturally high in oil. If you're trying to lose weight or tackle diabetes, you will want to avoid them. Not, we're not saying try to diminish it or limit, but avoid that. Avoid, if you're trying to tackle diabetes, avoid the nuts, seeds, olives, and avocados. So let's see. Absolutely read labels, and don't forget to read the ingredients, because the many names for fat and sugar and other nutrients. Exactly. There are 10 or more names for sugar or fat that are there to deceive you. So if there are, like Mary McDougall says, or Dr. McDougall as well, if there are words that you can't pronounce, put it aside. Okay, the ingredients should be very easy to read. What about good fats? I love this. I love this when people pull out of their hat right there by magic. Well, what about good fats? We all need good fats. Yeah, we all need good fats in very tiny amounts, but we do. There are two types of fat that your body actually needs. So what is important to know is that you need only a tiny amount of those. And I am on page 57, okay? The body's need for these essential fats is no more than, the body's need for these essential fats is no more than 2 to 3% of your daily caloric intake. That is a very small amount. Only 2 to 3% of your whole calories is supposed to be from these essential fats. And that 2 to 3% is already embedded in the whole food plants and plant-based diet like we eat. Where do you find them? Well, you find them pretty much everywhere, but beans, vegetables, and fruits are very low in fat overall. But the traces they do contain are relatively rich in good fat, that is alpha-linolenic acid. This is the basic omega-3 fat that your body uses to produce other good fats. Nuts, seeds, and soy products contain large amounts. Linoleic acid is found in many plant foods too. So on page 58, the second paragraph, it says, the best way to get the right kind and amount of fat in your diet is to skip animal products, fried foods, and oily food products, and get your nutrition from vegetables, fruits, beans, and whole grains. Does it really matter whether or not we avoid animal products and added oils? Absolutely. A typical North American or European diet might provide 80 to 100 grams of fat per day, or even more. So when you switch from beef to chicken and fish, keeping portions modest and limiting added oils, well, that will trim to about 60 grams of fat instead of 80 or 100. But listen to this. Setting animal products aside and avoiding added oils can drop this number to close to 20. So now we go from 80 to 100 grams of fat to 20 grams of fat. That is a considerable decrease when you put aside all animal products and added oils. In the process, your cholesterol intake, which would be well over 200 milligrams per day on an unmodified diet, will drop to 0. And every cell in your body will thank you. Those two fats Dr. Gustavo mentions will not be on the ingredient list. No, they will not. You are correctly. Okay. And then number 3, to finish today, is going to be favorite foods with a low glycemic index. What is the glycemic index? It's simply a number. It's a number that indicates how rapidly any given food releases sugar into the bloodstream. A food with a high GI releases sugar into the bloodstream quickly. And if the number is low, it will release sugar slowly. So, for example, white bread will release sugar fast into the bloodstream. But in contrast, pumpernickel bread has a low GI, and those are the kind of things that you have to watch. If you're going to eat bread, you want to go with the pumpernickel bread. So What is, I think, important here, like, let's see. Let's look at this here. On page 61, there is what I want to highlight. The take-home lesson, talking about glycemic index, this is page 61, is that pulverizing grains into flour or using yeast to make dough rise, for example, starts the digestive process before you even put the food in your plate. An intact grain is slow to come apart and release glucose into your bloodstream, while a heavily processed grain is likely to disintegrate quickly. Thus, old-fashioned oatmeal, which consists of whole oats, has a low GI glycemic index. But quick cooking oatmeal is made by slicing the oat grains into fragments, and of course, that has a higher glycemic index. He talks about pasta, which is really interesting because pasta is not made with yeast, so it has no air pockets, and it will absorb a lot of water. So it has a lower GI, but it is a place here in the book where Dr. Barnard talks about the glycemic index, again, being careful with it and not comparing it with foods outside the whole food plant base. So always, if you're going to look at the glycemic index, I never do personally, but if you're going to look at it, make sure that you're comparing foods in the same group, that you don't compare, let's say, a yogurt with a sweet potato, okay, or a slice of pizza with a zucchini, okay, something like that. Just make sure that you're staying within the same group. Okay, so our time is up, and I promise that next week we will finish this chapter. I don't get tired of rereading information, because sometimes the information is so dense that it is good to read it more than once. So maybe reread chapter 3 and 4. Can you talk about the higher fructose in some fruits like bananas, and should we limit these fruits so it doesn't trigger insulin resistance? I think that what I have read from this book and other books that we've read in this book club is that if you're trying to lose weight or not gain weight, limit your intake of fruit to 1 to 2 fruits per day. Remember that when we're talking about fruits in general, they do have intact composition. They have intact fiber, intact water content, intact everything. So we don't generally worry about it unless you told me that you're eating, 10 bananas per day. But, I may eat a banana in the morning with my oatmeal and some apples, and then later on in the day, I may eat a tangerine, and maybe later on, I may eat half of a, melon. And so it's a variety of foods. We can ask this question to the doctor when we invite him, but don't, I like this saying that Chef AJ has. We tend to tend to major on minor things. So by saying that is that, I'm not saying that you guys do that. I'm just saying because it's so easy to see out there people focusing on really minor issues when the major issues, which is get all that animal fat and animal protein out of your body, That's the main focus. So let's keep that in mind to avoid majoring in minor things. So, but with that being said, try to have a variety. That's another thing that I have learned by working with doctors and dietitians and chefs in the plant-based world. Keep a variety, and you will have you won't have to worry a lot about anything. Just keep a variety of fruits, a variety of starches, a variety of non-starchy vegetables. And again, if you're trying to tackle diabetes and overweight or obesity, at least at the beginning, avoid those foods that have a higher fat content, like nuts, seeds, avocados, olives, and some of the dry fruits. All right. So thank you again. I am sorry that sometimes, how about food combining? Any rules? The only rule that I have, and I have read it and I have heard it, don't ask me where now, because I hear a lot of information when I do these webinars. But I also learned it by observing what doctors and chefs and dietitians eat and put on their plates. This is the rule that I have. I don't combine starches with fat. Okay, so I won't eat, for example, mashed potatoes or a baked potato with slices of avocados. Okay, or I'm not going to eat rice with walnuts. I might put walnuts on a salad because salad is mostly non-starchy vegetable. So that's like my rule of food combining. Other than that, I combine foods, and I do stay within the 60, 70% of my plate being starch. Okay, I'm going to send you a surprise, a gift in the replay. So watch out when the email goes out, because there's going to be there something, and it's going to be tomorrow, because I cannot share with you before tomorrow. But I hope you will enjoy it. Goodbye, everyone. Until next week.